It's nice to start on time because there's a limited amount of time, and thanks. Lovely to see so many people. So I'll begin by sharing the screen for the dedication of offerings and the 3 Refuges and 5 Precepts, which is our traditional way of beginning and a traditional way for a Theravada Buddhist to perhaps when they come to the temple in a Theravada country, they look forward to. I say on what we call a poster today, or certainly they would want to take the Refuges and Precepts. Of course, on a poster today, they would take 8 precepts, but we're just going to take the 5 precepts, which is the standard for lay practice. To the Blessed One, the Lord, who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. So I'll move on to the 3 Refuges and 5 Precepts, and if you'd like to join in, you're welcome. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Pāṇātipāta Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinādāna Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame sumi cha chara veramani sikkhabadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada veramani sikkhabadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura Maria Majjapamadhatana Veramani Sikkhabadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhabadani silena sugatinyanti silena bhoga sampada silena nikutinyanti tasma silang visodaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Earlier this evening, I was looking in a book. The Anguttara Nikaya is a book of numbers, the gradual increase of numbers, book of the ones, book of the twos, book of the threes, like that. And a piece of paper was in there, and that made me somehow one thing led to another, and I came upon this, so I thought I would share it with you. It's about learning to listen. And so I don't know whether you can see that. Maybe it's a bit big. But just thinking of the first sentence, I'll make it a bit smaller in case you don't have a full screen. During an informal gathering at his residence one evening, the master said, "When you listen to the Dhamma, you must open up your heart and compose yourself at its center, in its center. Don't try and accumulate what you hear, or make painstaking efforts to retain it through your memory. Just let the Dhamma flow into your heart as it reveals itself, and keep yourself continuously open to the flow in the present moment. What is ready to be retained will remain. It will happen of its own accord, not through forced effort on your part." It's interesting, he goes on to say that when you expound the Dhamma, there must be no force involved. The Dhamma must flow spontaneously from the present moment, according to circumstances. But he says that, when he goes on to say that when he's talking, sometimes people ask him, sometimes they show no apparent desire to hear the Dhamma, but there it is. It just happens. It just flows from him. And the Dhamma just keeps flowing with no effort whatsoever. At other times, people seem quite keen to listen. And even though they formally ask for a discourse, then there's nothing. It won't happen. What can you do? I don't know. I don't know either. I don't know why it is, but sometimes it just happens like this. I can quite see this happening this evening. Who knows? Perhaps nothing will come. But it's a lovely reflection, isn't it, on how to listen to the Dhamma, that we don't need to make a special effort. So we don't need to make a special effort to retain and remember. To open the heart, what we need to hear will stick. It's what will, and even we might not remember after the evening what it was, but sometime later it might come to us just when we need it. So the Dhamma is there. It is received in the heart rather than in the intellect. In that case, we don't have to reason it out. If we try to reason things out, then we often miss the Dhamma. We miss the essence of it, and the heart isn't open. Whereas we just open the heart, not trying to work it out, but just listen with an open heart. Try, like when you're listening to someone speak, if you get caught up too much in what they say, then you stop listening. You start to get the particular thing they just said starts to fill the mind, and you could become intellectually occupied with that, and you stop listening. From that moment, you're not listening to what they're saying anymore. You're listening to your own inner dialogue about what they've previously said. And so that's not true listening. True listening is to be in the present moment with what's being said, just opening the heart so that we're present with as best we can with the present moment, with what's spoken, and not too consumed with the intellectual effort of trying to understand it at the time. And even then, another thing that I think is important is that we might find there's just one thing that we find useful. If we listen, say this evening, and there's just one thing that's useful that we can take away and put into practice, if you like, to apply it in our lives, then the evening's been worthwhile. It's been of value. And so we don't need to feel like we have to retain everything, but just open the heart. And if there's one thing that's useful, then it might change our lives. So that's a reflection on listening. So I think it'd be good to think of meditation, to practice meditation now. To practice meditation is a slightly false way of thinking, because we never need to think of starting and finishing meditation, because meditation's always here, always aware. The opportunity to be aware is always here and now. But conventionally we say we begin our meditation practice. So what we're doing is being perhaps more deliberately aware. We've set aside this time to stop doing other things in order to be here today this evening to practice meditation. And so what's that? We do some things which are helpful, supportive of meditation practice, such as establishing an upright posture. So as best you can, if you can hold the body upright, the back upright, it's very helpful, supportive of awareness, because to be aware we need energy. And if we hold the back upright, that will encourage alertness, encourage us to be awake. Even if we're sitting on a chair, it's helpful not to lean back, but if we can, to support the back ourselves with the muscles at the base of the spine. And to find a point of balance. When I do this, already I'm becoming more aware and alert, because I'm curious about where that point of balance might be. So I've already found an object of meditation, curiosity to find what the upright body, posture, point of balance, not leaning to one side or another. How's that feel? How can that be found, discovered? It's a relaxed and upright posture. So it's helpful to deliberately relax the shoulders, because we often hold a lot of tension in the shoulders. It can be very difficult. I find it difficult to relax the shoulders. I have to deliberately do it. Perhaps giving attention to the right shoulder and then the left shoulder. Try to see how that experience of dropping the shoulders, how's that feel? Letting the arms hang naturally at the sides. You may have to not support them for a bit, just to get the sense of them dropping at the sides of the body. And then when we put our hands one on top of the other, we make sure we're not pushing up with the hands, holding the shoulders up, but just letting the weight of the hands rest in the lap or on the legs, on the knees perhaps. Letting the muscles in the neck relax. Taking a deep breath in, letting a long exhale out is a way of relaxing. 2 or 3 of those. Having established our best attempt at an upright posture, and we can notice when the body slumps, and then return to the upright posture. We have a standard to return to. So when the body's out of alignment, we bring it back into alignment. And that helps bring awareness to that, to sleepiness, because when the body slumps, it's a sign of sleepiness. But it can also be a sign of restlessness. When we're restless, the body often moves around, the body becomes restless. So remembering that the upright and relaxed posture is our standard, then we can return, bring the body back, and remember to relax into that point of balance. I find it helpful to do what we call a body scan, to bring the attention deliberately from the top of the head to the toes, little step by step, noticing the tension wherever it's manifest, and unclenching the muscles, just giving permission for the muscles to unclench wherever I notice tension around the face, the jaw, around the cheeks. And with the thought that what we're doing here to unclench the muscles that are tight, it's a kind of letting go, isn't it? We're not really doing letting go, we're stopping tension, stopping the tense tightness of holding on. That's what we're doing. The tension is the doing. Letting go is the stopping doing. It's not a doing activity, it's a releasing, opening, letting go. And so wherever we notice that tension, a tense muscle in the chest or in the abdomen, in the hands, in the buttocks, or in the leg. Wherever we notice a tense muscle, we can let go. Give permission for that clenching to let go, to unclench. And so we can work methodically up from the soles of the feet to the top of the head. Perhaps noticing particular areas where there's tension, tightness, seeing how they've changed since we visited them before. How are the muscles in the face now? How's the tension around the jaw and the cheeks? How's that? Perhaps the first time we noticed, we thought we'd let it go, but there it is again. But this time, softer, easier to unclench. Muscles gradually softening. So as we do this for the body and for the physical sensations, so we can do it for the mind, for mental stress, mental sensation, softening, relaxing, opening, not pushing away, but neither grasping nor pushing away. Allowing but not being caught up with what arises in the mind. Our point of balance is sustained awareness in respect to the mind. Simply noticing in a sustained way. Allowing things to cease by simply not buying into them, allowing them to come and go. But not owning them. When we can see how things arise and cease, mental states, feelings, really see them without interfering. We can see so clearly how they're just mental states, just feelings. That's what they are. They're just the human condition. It's natural for the mind to be this way. It's what it does. However it is, it's completely natural and to be expected. Nothing special, and there's no problem that we need to create. Simply to notice how things are, arising and ceasing. So we have a point of balance in the body, always available to refer to sustain. And we have a point of balance in the mind. It's always available to sustain. Point of balance in the mind is sustained attention. Simply noticing, being present. Key, there's a number of keys, one of which is non-judgmental awareness. Simply to notice, doesn't judge. Better or worse, good or bad, it simply notices. It's willing to investigate. How is it really? What's it like? What's happening? Not through intellectual analysis, but simply to genuinely notice how it is, what it's like, what's happening. What is this experience like right now? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be known. It can be acknowledged. It can be allowed in. That's how we understand. Through direct experience. For example, if the mind's calm, we can know it. It's calm. If the mind's restless, we can know that it's restless. That's what I mean by knowing. We don't need to analyze and reason out why. All we need to do is notice how it is. We don't need to judge, saying it should be like this and it shouldn't be like that. All we need to do is notice. It's like this. This is the mind that's calm. This is the mind that's restless. This is the mind that's kind. This is the mind that's unkind. This is the mind that's honest. This is the mind that's dishonest. This is what it's like. This is what my experience is. Recognizing like this, we look at the human condition. Rather than adding an owner, thinking that we're special in some way. These are universal human experiences. And every one of them is our teacher. We can listen to what they have to teach us. And we can watch them change. Sensations, mental states, thoughts that come and go. Mind that changes from calm to restless, back again. We can notice that. It's a quality of change. It's everywhere, in everything we experience. We can notice how it arises and ceases. unbidden? How can we say that we own it? How can we really say it's ours when it just arises and ceases, comes and goes? We can notice how we can create suffering out of it so easily, out of wishing and wanting it to be otherwise, trying to hold on to how we would like it to be. How hopeless is that? So we can learn from that direct experience, understand. And realize that at every moment, in every experience, there's the possibility, the opportunity to let go. Let go of the grasping mind. Unclench that which holds on. Just as we can unclench a tight muscle in the body, so we can unclench the grasping mind. And what we get is freedom, peace. It's like laying down a burden, isn't it? Ding. 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 So what comes to mind is I went to town this morning, town being Hemel Hempstead. I went there to have a flu jab, and I was walking down the main street, just on my way to get some sandpaper. I thought I might pick some up in a shop just along the other side of the road from where I was heading for the flu jab, and just down a little bit. And just as I came along the road and just in a bit of a just out of sight, I came upon very suddenly two bhikkhus, two monks from Amaravati, who were standing in the sun with their bowls on Pindapat, arms round, which means in Hemel Hempstead, just standing there with your bowl, because nobody was there, nobody was talking to them. And the tradition is simply to stand there with your bowl. You don't go up to people and say, why? Well, this is what I'm doing here. I'm hoping you're going to give me some lunch. There's no sign around to say, hey, if you've got anything here for food, please drop it in my bowl or anything like that. I came upon them completely out the blue, and completely, I don't remember seeing them, monks being in the town before, although my wife says she's seen them. So I wasn't expecting this, and suddenly there they were, and my first immediate thought was, and I said to them, "Don't go anywhere, I'm going to get you something to eat." And I looked around, where's the nearest place to get some food? I rushed across to the road and found a Tesco's, and I went and bought some things. I just had to get this. Now I haven't got time to think, because it was already 11:15, and they have to eat before midday, so I didn't have time to look around much. Gathered up what I thought were suitable things. I went to check out, and there was somebody I had to wait a little bit. I was thinking, oh dear, I hope they're not too long. They weren't very long. I managed to get these things, and I went out, and they were still standing there. So I offered them. They opened their bowls. There was nothing in them, and I filled their bowls with my offerings, and then I had a bit of a chat, and the whole thing happened so suddenly. That's really the reason I'm telling you this is because it was so. At the time, I didn't have time to think. I just immediately had to act spontaneously to buy some food and get back in, give it to them so that they would have time to eat. And then I had a chat with them, and then I explained I had to go to get my flu jab. I had a timed appointment, so I had to leave. And in fact, when I got back home, and I got a text or a WhatsApp from someone, and I told them about it, and it was almost then that I started to reflect on what had happened, because I hadn't really had time, and how one thing that reminded me of being in Thailand, because when I went to Thailand, then we a few years ago with some friends from Amaravati, and we gave alms when the monks went on Pindapat, and we offered them things, put in their bowls. So I suppose that it reminded me of that experience. Except that when we were in Thailand, their bowls were full, and here in Hemel Hempstead, the bowls were empty. I had this thought, oh, this is great. I'm being able to fill up their bowls. Wonderful. And when I reflected on this, I thought that's interesting, because it was like mindfulness should be. It's like a spontaneous moment. I didn't have time to reflect, to think about it. I just had to act straight away. So it was a lovely experience of being in the moment, of not having time to think about what to buy them, but just to buy whatever I thought was most suitable, appropriate, and buying things quickly. And it was all, and going straight out there, and it all happened straight away. It was lovely. And isn't that how mindfulness should be? That present moment awareness. How nice not to have to deliberate, to to work it out. You know, when we make, if I'd have tried to organize something like that to happen, to have, perhaps I would have had to get in touch with the monastery and say, well, I'd really like to offer to the monks, and could they be at a certain place at a certain time, so that I could, on a particular day, and I would then be thinking about, what am I going to get, and what should be suitable, and can I get there and be there at the right time, offer that. It would have been nice, but not spontaneous in the way it was. There was something very beautiful about that. And that also the timing, because it just happened that I had time to do it, that I was, although I had an appointment, there was time. So I didn't have, although I felt I needed to act quickly, I wasn't rushed. I could do what was, and I could do it. And isn't that wonderful how sometimes there's time? There is time to do things. I don't know how the world, as though the spheres kind of come into alignment and make the opportunity possible. So that was a lovely thing to do. An unexpected and delightful, enjoyable thing. Simple, and very innocent. They were very innocent. There was no rush. They weren't rushed. They didn't seem anxious about whether they were going to get anything to eat or not. They insisted on, or they asked if they could give me a blessing, a short chant. And they had time to talk about how things were for me. And that was nice. So that's wonderful, isn't it, when those moments can happen. Just like that. By the way, if you'd like to send me a question, you can please put it in the chat. That would be really nice and helpful, because I find normally questions are really, really helpful, really kind of useful. I remember I had some good questions last time, and it was very nice to be able to answer them. So do feel free to ask any questions you would like. It was interesting leading the meditation. How that, reading what Ajahn Chah had written, and that certain amount of spontaneity in that. There's, although I think we begin our meditation tend to have a certain way of doing it. It's a habit, it's like a conditioning process. There's a much more open and freeing development of that. I never know where it's going to go. Yeah, I'll put the Ajahn Chah text up again. I've got to share my screen. It's no just putting it up and looking at it myself. I like that. If you must expound the Dhamma, the best way is not to think about it at all. Simply forget it. The more you think and try to plan, the worse it will be. That's certainly true. Sometimes Dhamma just flows. But sometimes it takes time. I noticed that I've tried to, with my teaching, to start at the end. I remember listening to talks I'd given when they were recorded, and I found that quite helpful, because the first time I listened to a talk I'd given, I thought, well, if I'd have just cut out the first 20 minutes, it would have been brilliant. I thought, oh, then the answer is to start at the end. And that's very interesting. Very good advice, I think. If you need to cut out, if you cut out the explanation and the story, the context, the excuse. Often people, when they give a talk, they start off by apologizing. How unworthy am I to be giving a talk to these wonderful people and all of that. Well, that might be true, but it doesn't really help. And what's really interesting is it's what comes at the end, and that is when when it begins to flow. Sometimes when you're flowing along quite smoothly, then we kind of get to that natural flow of teaching. And then that's a very, it's good if you can start there. Why not start at the end? That's not so easy to do. Somebody asks, oh, maybe took a screenshot, yes. Somebody asks, what does it mean when in the chant it says, let virtue be purified? Oh. Well, that's interesting, because I guess it means perhaps it's referring to, I'm guessing, you have to work out, perhaps we can all answer that question. What does it mean when it says let virtue be purified? Because that's what that causes me to reflect, doesn't it? So that's what does it mean when we talk about reflection? You discover from that. This is when you take a question like this. This is how to reflect. What does it mean when it says let virtue be purified? So how do we reflect on that? So we what we do is we bring it into our own experience. We think we kind of somehow, and I don't know, it has to work for you, but somehow it's not something. It's not a reasoning out, but we come into the heart in some way. That's a real question for the heart, isn't it? What does it mean when we say let virtue be purified? If it wouldn't be, for example, comparing ourselves to others and trying to be more pure, more virtuous than somebody else. There wouldn't be any purity in that, would there? We'd be just criticizing other people. We'd be trying to make ourselves out to be better than somebody else by being more virtuous. There would be no purity in that. It's not a competition, is it? Being virtuous. So that wouldn't be. When we reflect on this, one way of reflecting is to reflect on what it isn't. What would be the virtue that's not pure? What would that be? It would be perhaps virtue which we do out of habit, or because our parents told us to, that somebody else said it was good. If somebody said to me, it's good to make offerings to the monks, and I did it for that reason, then because somebody told me to, or because I was trying to, do it because I'd read somewhere, but it wouldn't be purified. It wouldn't be pure in the same way as if it comes from the heart, spontaneously, as I described. That wish to make an offering. The analysis of whether something, I should, how much would I spend? For example, if I'd have thought, oh, I should get this, that will impress them. That's really expensive. That wouldn't be pure, would it? Or if I thought, I'll get this because it's on special offer. That's not really pure. That's about, it might be appropriate thing to buy, but it's not the right reason to buy it. So it's our intention, isn't it, that purifies virtue. It must be the intention that if we act with the right intention, then our virtue is purified, I would say. It must be to do with intention. Our intention, not to act because somebody tells us to, but because it's coming from the heart. So our intention is good. What if we were to speak truthfully, for example, but if our honesty was cruel, it wouldn't be from a good heart, would it? It wouldn't be with the right intention. When it would be no hardship to find something to praise, no difficulty to find something to praise, but we find something to criticize, even though it's true. It's not coming from the heart. It's not really purifying virtue. It might be honest, but it's not really purified. So to purify the virtue of honesty is to speak with kindness, not just to speak truthfully. There's an intention in that, isn't there? So I think it must be about right intention. Intention must be how we purify virtue. And intention, that's an interesting one with regard to livelihood. How could we purify our right livelihood? Well, again, through intention. It might be that our livelihood isn't perfect. We can find ways to fault it. We could say that the company we work for may not be always do everything as we would think was right. Or that the kind of activity that we're involved with might not be, we might not be completely at ease with it all the time, but yet there are other factors, like we need to have a living, make a living, so that we can maintain our family, and that's also a factor that needs to be brought into consideration. So all in all, our intention is to have right livelihood, and it's the best we can do. So it's still right intention. It's not. It may not be perfect, but it's the best we can do. If we were to analyze, and we could find fault with any kind of livelihood. So at some point, we just have to take the standard of good enough. It's best, our best intention. That has to be good enough. And of course, with livelihood, it's a lot about, not just about the right company, the external conditions, but what we bring to that. So how we are with people in the company, the colleagues, the people we work with, can we bring some joy in their lives? Can we be kind to them? So can we treat them with kindness? Can we, if we're in a managerial role, how can we help them to develop in their careers? What can we do that would be beneficial for people? How can we give time to them when they need help and support them? So there are lots of aspects of right livelihood that we can cultivate. So there are lots of ways to purify virtue, and let virtue be purified. I think that's my reflection on that. Thank you. Has anyone got any other questions? By all means, if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question, that's okay.
Could I just say something, Martin?
Yeah.
Thank you for your teaching and for telling us the story about meeting the two monks in the street. I thought that was the purest way of showing mindfulness in action. It just demonstrated everything that I certainly would want to do. And it came spontaneous. It was spontaneous. You didn't have time to think about it. You just did what was required. And that's, to me, a real example I will take from this, from tonight. And I won't forget, because it was so so much something living, how life happens sometimes. And Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And we can all do this. You know, the opportunity, we never know. It's always there, isn't it?
Yeah.
In every moment. We don't know what the moment brings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I say something, please, Martin?
Yes.
I was also very moved by your story, and it brought back a memory which I've lived with for many years, from my 8th birthday. It was the day after my 8th birthday, and I lived in the countryside. I grew up in Dorset, very isolated, and it was the morning. It was summer, and I was standing. I'd just getting dressed and standing at my bedroom window, looking down towards the front gate. And this very elderly man walked along the road, looking very shabby. He'd obviously walked quite a way. He didn't have a car, and we were right out in the isolated countryside. And he stopped outside the gate and he started playing his accordion. And I was standing there looking down. In front of me was my dressing table, and on it were 2 shiny half-crown pieces that I'd been given for my birthday. And without thinking, without even tying the ties behind my dress, I took the 2 pieces and I hurried downstairs and walked out to him and gave him the 2 pieces, the 2 half-crown pieces. And he was very pleased. He played for a little while, and then he walked off. My mother was rather upset, and she said to me, "You could have given him 1 and kept 1 for yourself," which I never really felt badly about that, and I remembered it all my life. And I think what you said about innocence was very true. This innocent impulse that comes from the heart. When you just move without thinking, and you do something that just seems to be the right thing to do at that moment. And I sometimes think about it when I see, unfortunately, as we see today, too many beggars on the street, and one sometimes stops and considers, you know, how many people shall I give a coin to, and are they real beggars, and so on and so forth. So that innocence of the moment, the innocence of childhood is something that we need to hang on to, I suppose, or rather, maybe we're not supposed to cling to things, but that it's something that hopefully is in the heart still, even as we grow older.
I think to return to, I think it's something we return to. I think that's very beautiful, beautiful thought, that we can return to that innocence. And it's beautiful, beautiful idea. Lovely, a lovely thing to think that that's possible. I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that I think we hope for in our practice as well, isn't it? That beginner's mind thing, you know, about not losing our innocence, not becoming too jaded or not over-intellectualizing things.
Yeah, because especially as we get older, we can become very skeptical. We've seen it before. We're not, you know, we've heard it so many times. Oh no, not again. And yeah, I think that to cultivate in our practice to return to that innocence in our meditation practice, for example, then that's gives us a possibility that we might bring that into our daily life. Yeah, it's worth doing. Yeah, it's so beautiful. So interesting what your mother said. Yeah.
Yes. Well, my mother was an adult, and we were a one-parent family at the time, so the money meant something to her.
Yeah.
And to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I hadn't really thought about what I was going to do with it yet. I mean, I felt that his need, I don't know why. Why should I suddenly feel that he had this need, this old man who'd walked along to play the accordion.
And
did you think that your mother was right when she told you off? Or did you think she was wrong or not?
I think I felt that I was right.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't think that she was right. In later years, perhaps I understood her better. Yes, when I became a mother myself, perhaps. But no, I didn't think that she was right. I thought that I was right. I never regretted it. Yeah. I never thought what I could have done with that money. No, it was. And, 5 shillings was a lot in those days.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. And it's also a good example of how we can forgive our parents. Because we can understand why they did those things. And we might, at the time, sometimes we carry things from childhood that we think we still haven't really forgiven our parents for, or we never even thought that we were carrying them, but yet they still influence us. And I find it that I've certainly reflected. I often still reflect on some of the things my mother said, and when I understand, it helps. It makes a difference through understanding, and I realize, I've been pushing those things away, and it's quite good to bring them up. And when I look at them, I think, I can understand why she said it. She called me this, she called me that, but I understand why. And I don't need to believe. I know that I don't need to believe the things that she said, but I can understand why she said it. And then it's okay. Yeah.
Yes, I agree totally. I have the same thing with my mother, who did something to me that was, not good for me. But in later years, I understood why she'd done it. I still thought she was wrong, but I understood. That's one of the things about growing older, I suppose, is that one gains understanding of why people do things they do.
Yeah, I think that's a part of our ability to forgive. And in fact, you could summarize everything as understanding. If we can understand, everything falls into place. It all comes from understanding. So that's what the Buddha taught. The core of his teaching is understanding. He didn't ask us to believe. It's not a faith-based religion. It's based on understanding.
And experiencing for ourselves, so that we understand.
Yes, direct experience.
Yes.
Because he's not asking us to understand anything difficult or hard to understand. It's what we need. Often it's the things that we need to understand. We push away. We don't. They're so close. We can't see them. So they're not. It's not like it's hard. It's not hard intellectual work. It's hard. It's work for the heart, isn't it?
Indeed. But the thing is that so often, in as one gets older, the heart hardens, or becomes enclosed and less accessible. And that's one of the great things about meditation, is getting in touch with the heart.
That's right. And so we cultivate a pliant mind. That's the training of the mind. Meditation is about mental training. It's called bhavana. And that means cultivating a pliant mind, and that's a mind that's open and allows pliant, flexible. It's not fixed. It doesn't hold on to fixed views. It doesn't take positions around things. Because what you mean, I think, when we hold on to fixed positions, we're not open, not willing to listen. That whole kind of emphasis of what this theme of this evening has been about listening. So, the ability to listen comes from having an open heart, willingness to open to what maybe even very often to open to things we don't want to hear, the things that we don't like people saying, a willingness to listen without pushing away. It's lovely, a beautiful thing to cultivate. And that's meditation practice, listening, willingness to listen with a cultivating pliant mind, not taking a fixed position.
Yes.
Mm.
Thank you very much, Martin.
So let's finish with the closing homage. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Ajahn Sandra will be leaving next week. I'll be supporting her, so I'll see you then. If you can come. Good night, everyone.